With the 12th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select...
Michael Penix Jr.
That's good. That's what Todd wants. Henry, what do you want? What do you want, not what do you think?
Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, I was going to say
like
Jayden
if we can just say whatever we want, I'll say Jayden Daniels. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I would go Jayden Daniels as well. I think the Denver Broncos select the DNVR Broncos Podcast. Welcome to the show. We've got Super Bowl 50 champ Todd Davis with the bling on today. We've got Henry Chisholm with the Nuggets bling on, repping the Nuggets. And Zach Stevens rolling with you.
4 days.
We've got two producers behind the camera, so shout out to all the work going on behind the camera. Subscribe, throw a thumbs up if you're listening on YouTube. And guys, it's officially mock draft season. Mel Kiper, probably the biggest name out there.
Yep.
Dropped his first mock draft yesterday, so that means the season is officially underway. And we're going to break down all the different guys that mock drafts have the Broncos picking, but we're really going to key in on 6 or 7 guys today and probably moving forward. And Henry, why don't you tell us why we've identified these specific guys and why it's important to key in on certain mock drafts?
Well, so anybody can make a mock draft. Like, we could sit here and just be like, yeah, number one, like kind of run through.
We will do that.
Oh, yeah, we will. And people will love it because anything that has a mock draft, like, people are all in. It's like, who the Broncos going to get? Any fan of any team would love to see whatever. But there's really only, like, a few guys who, first of all, like, grind through the tape. Actually, there's a lot of guys who grind through the tape. But then what separates, like, Mel Kiper, Dane Brugler, Daniel Jeremiah, is that they're also constantly talking with, like, GMs and executives around the league. And so they actually get to know what teams are thinking. And I think that with mock drafts, it's cool to see, like, who the Broncos pick. But especially at this stage, what I'm most interested in is, like, how many quarterbacks are going in the first round? Yep. Or, like, those sorts of things. Who is the top cornerback? And those guys have talked to so many people that at this point, you kind of start to see who's in the top 5, who's in the top 10, which quarterback is number 4.
And you said there was research done by looking at specifically, like, Mel Kiper and stuff, and his success rate is higher than just the random CBS Sports guy that does it.
Which, no offense to CBS Sports, but what the nerds have found is that they do a pretty bad job with this stuff. Them in Pro Football Focus, like, they rely a lot on their own grades, which means that what they project is a little bit off the wall compared to what's actually happening. But yeah, so, like, Mel Kiper, he actually only got 1 pick right in last year's mock draft, which is kind of crazy. It was Bryce Young at number 1. But over the past, like, 5 years or so,
you pretty much are going to discredit everything else you just said, Henry.
But I mean, like, again, like, that's not really the point at this point. The point is, like, how exactly do these guys stack up? And then also, so, like, Kiper, that people have also, I think, like, Hogshaven.
Like the prospects, not the picks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, like, Hogshaven went through last year, I think, and found, like, Mel Kiper, when you look at his order of players, the players he ranks higher than others are better. So, like, when you look at who makes mock drafts with the most accuracy in terms of the players who are the best, Kiper's number 1. And he's, like, number 3 in terms of accuracy, in terms of, like, how far off they are from, like, the spots. But then there's, like, Brugler and DJ. Like, those guys are all just way up there at the top with all that stuff.
So if GMs want to be successful, they should just stick to his mock draft, because he's going to give them the best odd to pick the best players, what you're saying. Yes,
but it's also kind of a chicken and egg thing, because he's saying, like, who are the best players, then he's putting them up high. And so that's why, because
he's asking NFL teams.
Exactly. Yeah. And so he could, like, go to George Payton, for example, and be like, hey, what do you think of Terrion Arnold, the cornerback from Alabama? And be like, oh, you know, I think he's pretty good. What are people saying about these quarterbacks? Where are people saying these quarterbacks are going to be gone by 12? And so you can kind of have this little information trade with those top guys.
You know, what's fascinating, too, is there's probably a layer to this where in Mel Kiper's mind, or maybe he's actually gone through and done this, he's probably done some research on the GMs he talks to see how successful those guys are, and then probably listens to some guys more than others throughout this process, because he's been doing it for 30 or 40 years or something.
Maybe even more.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it couldn't be too much more because he's like in his early 60s. But yeah, like that, it is really interesting. I love the mock
You
drafts.
maybe want to like go back and check his win percentage now. Because if he was 1 for 32 last year, even though if you're doing it for 30 years, you got 30 picks right. Like, I don't know if that's a good winning percentage.
Oh, it's definitely not. But I think like when you look at most guys, they get like 5 or 6 right because like it's just so chaotic in terms of what's gonna happen. So who was
Each year they get 5 or 6 right?
the best? Yeah.
So then why would
Out of
we?
32.
Why are we putting Mel on this high pedestal if he got 1 right?
Like it was just a bad year.
Okay.
You have again like there's a 30-year track record, but that's why like when people say the Broncos are taking this guy, it's like okay, sure they are, but the bigger picture is like from 8 to 14, these 6 or 7 guys are getting drafted, and that sounds like kind of the Bronco range right there. Yeah. But it is also interesting because you get to see who all the nerds and like experts think the Broncos need, which is always kind of fun.
What makes a nerd not an expert? Like what
Reporting.
Okay.
I'm a nerd. I'm not asking George Payton who's getting drafted. I'm just watching.
Okay.
And I'm not even as big a nerd as these nerds. And I mean that with like respect to those nerds.
I love it. I think I'm gonna have at least Mel Kiper's success rate this year, because I'm gonna say that the Bears with the number 1 overall pick are drafting Caleb Williams. I think I'm gonna go 1 for 1 with that one.
Maybe
Yeah.
they trade back and get
Maybe.
somebody else.
Okay, I'll say the first pick in the
Yeah.
draft is Caleb
There you go.
Williams.
Yeah. That's a winner. That's a winner for sure.
Okay, so let's take a look around and let's start with Mel Kiper himself, because he's the biggest. As Henry's saying, he's the best as well. Biggest doesn't always mean best, but sometimes it does.
A lot of the time.
Yeah, a lot of the time, Henry, from experience or just from looking at Mel.
Here we go. I'll just stand by what I said.
So Mel has the Broncos not selecting a quarterback. He has the Broncos selecting pass rusher, outside linebacker, Latu,
Latu, yeah.
Latu?
Yep.
Latu.
From Washington.
Latu.
Formerly a Washington player. So he started his college career at Washington. He has a
Yep.
very interesting story. Then he transferred to UCLA
Yep.
and then balled out the past 2 years at UCLA. There's kind of a big caveat in there
Yes.
of what happened between when he was at Washington for his first season or two and when he got to UCLA. Todd, he didn't play for an entire season after playing 1 or 2 years at Washington as a freshman and sophomore.
Yep.
He medically retired for an entire season
Yeah.
because the Washington doctors, he suffered a neck injury his sophomore season at Washington. And then when he came back for that next season, the doctors said, your neck is not healed. In fact, you can never play football again. So he medically retired for an entire season.
Wow.
And then entered the transfer portal, went to UCLA. Some doctors clearly cleared him to play, said he
UCLA's,
was
yep.
fine enough. UCLA's cleared him to play.
They've got like good doctors.
Yeah, I would hope
like
so.
it's UCLA, yeah.
It's UCLA, it's a football team. I would hope so.
He's probably going to be like the first or second defensive player taken.
Assuming things don't go horribly with his medicals.
What's the problem with Penix? He was never told, hey, you should not probably play football again, and had to sit out a whole year because of it.
Yeah.
There's no neck issues there.
And this guy is going to have way more stress on his body.
Man.
than
Wait,
you
who's
hope
that?
Penix
This guy
is.
who?
Latu.
Latu,
yeah.
Yeah, I got
Nice,
it.
yeah.
I know. He's going to have so much more stress on his body throughout his career
This
than
is
you hope
crazy.
Michael Penix does.
Yeah,
Because
you
Penix
hope.
should be getting hit less than a defensive end/outside linebacker. With the Broncos on a 3-4 scheme, he would be an outside linebacker. He's 6'5", 267 pounds.
Yeah.
When you talk about like profiles of someone, this is Bradley Chubb.
Yeah.
This isn't a speed rusher. This is a guy that can win from speed, but I mean, he is a big body guy. I think Chubb was listed like at this exact same size coming out too.
Dang. Those are big boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For you to say it's a big boy means something.
Yeah, for real. I mean, we need edge defenders, but I don't think that's number one on our list. And I didn't see his whole list, but some of the lists I've seen see us taking the edge rusher when Brock Bowers is still on the board. Like,
Ooh.
I don't understand why we would do
Yeah.
that. We need offensive weapons. Like, we were able to make things happen with who we had last year, And I feel like in a lot of those pieces you can plug and play. But
Yeah.
you got some really good talent and some really good premier players still left on the board. I wouldn't take a edge rusher. We've done an edge rusher how many years now? From Shane Ray to Chubb. Like, we got to go maybe different directions.
It's a great point. So, Henry, do you have Mel's entire mock draft pulled up?
Yeah, I can pull it up real quick.
Because I am curious, who's on the board for the Broncos? Are 5 quarterbacks taken ahead, and then you also have Brock Bowers, like the 3 top receivers, Neighbors, Rome. They're all gone, and it just falls where you're like, well, shoot, we can take the best defensive player, might as well. If that's the case, okay, I understand. It's probably not the case.
Yeah.
And Todd, I'm with you. Like, the defense could get better, certainly. I mean, you're not the Baltimore Ravens. You're not a top 3 defense. But the defense got so much better after the awful first 5 games of the season.
Yep.
The offense needs help, has needed help for so long. So I'm with you. Unless, like, it falls so bad for you in the first 11 picks, this should be an offensive guy. How does it fall in Mel's
well,
draft?
first of all, in 2 of the big 3 drafts, 9 of the first 10 picks are offensive players.
Mock drafts?
Yeah. So there, I mean, if you want offense, there's a lot of offense in the draft.
But that could be bad news for the Broncos.
It depends on how you want to look at it. I mean, there will be offensive players off the board, but like when 20 of the 32, I think this one was 21 of the 32 picks are offense. Like, there's a lot of offense that's out there in this one. But so Caleb Williams goes first. Number 2 is Jayden Daniels.
Love it.
In front of Drake Maye,
Love it.
which is interesting.
Drake Maye has to be 3.
Yep,
then.
he's 3. And then the only other quarterback in the first round. So all of like the big 3, they have 4 quarterbacks in the first round. This one has JJ McCarthy at number 16 and says like he's a second round prospect, but somebody's going to reach because of the traits. So
You losing your mind?
for
about
quarterback,
I'm
Penix
questioning.
yet?
No, yeah, I'm questioning because who are the Falcons? Who do they have the Falcons taking? Why would they?
Falcons
not
have Dallas Turner. They just don't think those quarterbacks are good enough.
Wow.
Yeah, so Dallas Turner is the only defensive player. Like, he was the freak. Actually, he was Drew Sanders' roommate at Alabama. When they were, I think, were they both freshmen? No. How did that work? I know that they were roommates at some point. But as a freshman, Dallas Turner was like insane and hasn't been quite as productive. But he's just another freak.
Yeah, in fact, last year when Will Anderson was being talked about as the best defensive player in the draft and then was the first defensive player taken in the draft, and which the Texans did that crazy trade to go and get him.
Yeah.
There were some people around Alabama, but then also some draft people that thought Dallas Turner is actually better than Will Anderson, and I think that has cooled off a little bit, especially with how good Will Anderson's been this year, and Dallas Turner
He's had a down
was
year.
really good, but still, didn't have that breakout year. So, I mean, I guess if you land him at 9, but if I'm a Falcons fan, I'm losing my mind. Going down this route again?
Yeah.
But, I mean, if they say the quarterbacks aren't good, like, that's why they're saying it. Like,
Right.
if you're a Falcons fan, you might be upset about it, but if it turns out that you really do have top 3 quarterbacks and 3 quarterbacks who play like second rounders, in hindsight, they probably won't be as upset.
And one of the things that you highlighted off camera yesterday to me that you touched on now was one of the things you do look at mock drafts for, specifically like the big trusted mock drafts, is trends. It's not necessarily the hit rate, because you wouldn't be looking at Mel Kiper's and giving him any sort of credit if he was 1 for 32.
Yeah.
You look at those players, like you said, how those players that he ranks, how they stack out. But then another thing is you look at trends of how many quarterbacks are going in the first round. Maybe that can give you an insight. Like you said, 4 quarterbacks taken in a lot of these big mock drafts in the first round. If this trend continues and you truly believe that, maybe you roll the dice if you're the Broncos and hope one falls to the second round. You don't have a second round pick, so then you have to trade up in the second round. That's a conversation for later, but I just wanted to highlight that because that's something that you pointed out, Henry.
I guess the other thing with the trends, last year the quarterbacks moved up the board a little bit in the draft process. So like Mel Kiper's first was number 2,
Right.
CJ Stroud, number 4, Bryce Young, number 5, Will Levis, number 9, Anthony Richardson. And so it turned out there are actually only 3 because Levis wasn't a first round pick. But through all the mock drafts, I just went through like Kiper's first and last, Rugler's first and last, Jeremiah's first and last. Only one of those 6 only had 3 quarterbacks going. In the final draft, there were just 3 in the first round. And for the most part, the quarterbacks have stayed pretty much where they are. Obviously, like 2022, they all just like dropped off because there was only one in the first round. So like Kiper started with 4 in his first mock draft, and his last one he had 2, and it turned out it was just Kenny Pickett as a first round pick. But like there'll be ebbs and flows, but things do stay kind of similar.
Oh, interesting.
Kind of similar. Yeah.
So that's fascinating to follow because maybe Penix is there and that changes. Okay, I want to get back to where Mel Kiper had the Broncos and what players were still on the board. After I tell you about DraftKings Sportsbook, where I want to give out my DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the week after I tell you about how to really capitalize over at DraftKings. If you use the code DNVR when you sign up over at DraftKings Sportsbook and place a $5 bet, they're going to give you $200 in bonus bets instantly. And no better time to get in than this Sunday for championship weekend. You can use those $200 in bonus bets to make even more money by betting on the Chiefs to lose, betting on the Ravens to win in that case, or betting on the Lions to pull off the massive upset over the 49ers. Chiefs right now plus 3.5. It seems like that line is kind of stabled out right there. And the Lions plus 7 seems like that line has also stabled right around 7. So head to the App Store, download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now, and use the promo code DNVR at sign-up. I'm excited to see what our picks are for this weekend later in the week, but I want to give out a lock for my DraftKings pick of the week after I tell you that if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NFL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Football League. All rights reserved. Okay, our DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the week. I'm staying away from the Chiefs-Ravens game for now. I'm going to the other one. The closer we get to this game, the more I might just be hitting Lions money line. So that means I love Lions plus 7. They're going to keep this game within a touchdown at least. So give me Lions plus 7 for my DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the week. I love them to stay within a touchdown.
I'm going for like a big win right here. The Lions, I think, are going to be successful in the game, and they're going to have to do it on the ground. I think they're going to have to ground and pound these 49ers. I know they have a great defense, but they have to stick with what really works for their team. And right now, Jahmyr Gibbs is plus 950 for the first touchdown score.
Ooh.
Whoa.
That
I
is
feel
fun.
like Brock Purdy is going to come out a little slower than normal, like he did last week. And I think the Lions are going to still have some juice, some energy. So I'll take the plus 950. If it hits, I'll buy everybody around.
Let's go. Let's go.
That's a hell of a pick. I love it.
I've got the Buffs tonight. They're 2.5-point favorites at Washington. Washington isn't very good. And the Buffs are now just like healthy and rolling, and Cody Williams just got mocked as like the #1 pick in the draft. Like, they're hot. They're really good. And actually hottest team in the Pac-12 going up against, I guess Washington only lost the last one. So give up the 2.5 points. Buffs are going to win tonight.
Okay, help me out on this line really quick. No touchdown score over at DraftKings Sportsbook. So saying there's going to be no touchdown scored in the game is plus 18,000.
Wow.
I wouldn't bet on that, but
180 to 1. Wow.
yeah, you would?
No, because there's going to be a touchdown. But I mean, if it happened, you'd make a lot of money.
So that's under the first touchdown score. You can bet no touchdown score, but then under the last touchdown score column, the no touchdown score is plus 17,000.
Wow. So
What's-
don't take that one.
Yeah, exactly. What
What's
am
the
I
difference?
missing anything?
No.
Like, why would you take the one with less juice?
No, don't do it.
Maybe that's my sportsbook pick of the week, or DraftKings
Maybe.
sportsbook pick of the week. Because if you want to pick one of those, pick the plus 18,000,
Found a hack,
not the
yeah.
plus 17,000.
Why not?
Like, it's either nobody scores the first touchdown or nobody scores the last touchdown. It's the same bet.
Bet them both.
And shout out to our friends over at Circle K. If you want to be part of the inner circle, it's a free membership. Very simple. You download the app, use the QR code, which is on the screen. Just enter your email and phone number, and you are fully enrolled. After that, all you need is your phone number, to get the deals. The first 5 fill-ups, you get 25 cents off of gas. Gas is expensive. If you want to save some money, this is a great way to go about it. Your first 5 Polar Pops are free. Every 6 free on several items, including pizza, the roller grill, dispensary beverages, donuts, and more. If you want to be part of the inner circle, either download the app, hit your camera, get the QR code, scan the QR
Yeah,
code,
there you go. Yeah,
and join the inner circle.
Man, you said grass at first. I was like, they sell that type of grass over at Circle K?
Oh.
Grass.
Damn.
Grass for what? Gas. Grass can be gas, though. You know.
That is true. Grass can be gas. Should we run through the mock draft?
Yep.
So Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake Maye, we know that. Marvin Harrison Jr., best player in the draft. Brock Bowers, been like a freak since he was a freshman.
So he's a 5th pick?
Yep.
To who?
Chargers. A lot of the mock drafts have the Chargers taken, which makes sense. Like,
Yeah, that does
when you
make
just
sense.
look at like best player on the board and their needs.
Lot of I've either seen that or a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1 to 5.
Yeah, and
'Cause they got
receivers tough because like they've already got Keenan Allen, the first round pick from last year, and Mike Williams.
Keenan Allen is old. Mike
He
Williams
is
can
old.
stay healthy, but they
So-
did
and
go
the rookie
first.
sucks.
They did go first
Yeah.
round last year
Yeah.
for the wide receivers. I don't think they'll do it.
Yeah.
again.
That's why Brock Bowers just seems so easy. After
Yeah.
that, so number 6, the Giants have Malik Neighbors,
Wide
LSU,
receiver.
like best receiver in the country last year. If you look at the production,
So through 6 picks, 0 defensive guys picked.
yeah. Number 7, Joe Alt, the tackle from Notre Dame,
Yeah.
kind of like arguable top tackle. 8, Dallas Turner, first defensive player to the Falcons. Chicago Bears, Rome Odunze from Washington, the receiver. Number 10, Olufushanu, the big tackle from Penn State, goes to the Jets. Also arguably top tackle. Number 11, the Vikings take Nate Wiggins, like the speedy corner from Clemson.
They wouldn't take a quarterback.
Again, like according to Kiper, the quarterbacks are not worth it.
Come
Like you
on,
draft,
Mel.
you
Come
draft
on,
a
Mel.
quarterback there, they're saying nope. You're better off getting somebody who can play.
What's Mel say? You need to have a talk to Mel about Mel.
Yeah, Mel needs to
Mike
call
Penix.
you. That's
Look, I don't want him to go. I'm just trying to help. I don't want him to go 1 for 32 again. You know what I'm saying?
So we talked about it before. You read through those names.
Yep.
That's pretty much a nightmare scenario for the Broncos
Is
if
it?
they want to go. If they want to go offense,
Yeah.
because so many
2
of those
tackles,
offensive
3
guys were
receivers, and
taken.
Bowers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely have. I mean, Keon Coleman is a great receiver. Like he's also kind of redundant, like 6'4", kind of very Cortland Sutton-y in terms of how you use him. But if that's the offense Sean wants to run, that's the offense. To me, like Terrion Arnold, the cornerback from Alabama, I think he's the best cornerback in the draft. And so you have like Nate Wiggins off the board. It kind of feels lucky that he's still there, but
Last
Is
time the
what it is.
Broncos used a first-round pick on a cornerback, didn't they get kind of lucky selecting the second
Yes,
cornerback in
they
the draft?
did.
Because one pick ahead of them, the Panthers went a different direction at cornerback.
they did.
So just because you get the second one doesn't mean it's not the best. This is actually the only mock draft that I've seen where Nate Wiggins is the first cornerback drafted.
Yeah, me too. I didn't like track all his. I thought it was interesting. Kool-Aid McKinstry in all these drafts, they're saying like he's a 2nd-round prospect, and like a couple of them said like they need a cornerback, so they'll take him at like one at 31, one at 26. So I thought that was kind of interesting that we've like flipped so far. But you go back like Terrion Arnold, he's a monster. Like he's so big, like he plays in the run game, like he's just so sticky in coverage. I think he broke up like 15 passes last year, which is ridiculous.
Especially
Including
in
he had a great one on Brock Bowers, just blanketed Brock Bowers and made Brock Bowers look small, which like not the biggest tight end, but still like it is kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, and let's talk about Terrion Arnold because, like I said, we're focusing on 6 or 7 mock drafts, and I'll just read who those mock drafts are going to be. Mel Kiper, ESPN's Jordan Reed, ESPN's Matt Miller, NFL.com's Daniel Jeremiah, NFL.com's Bucky Brooks, and PFF's Trevor Sakima. That's one just to kind of throw in because it's a different perspective. Maybe
very
not
different.
one of the ones to like believe is going to actually happen. And then the Athletics, Dane Brugler. Those are the ones that we've identified as kind of the top ones. And you mentioned Terrion Arnold. Not just in these mock drafts, but in the majority of mock drafts. This is the guy, the cornerback from Alabama. This is the one that the Broncos are taking in not just the majority, but over 50% of them. So these are the 7 mock drafts we're kind of keying in on. 4 of them have them going with Alabama's Terrion Arnold. And so let's dive into him a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, the Broncos just have a big hole at cornerback. Like, you've got Jaquan in the slot, you got Pat outside, and then, like, you're looking at Damari Mathis or, like, Riley Moss, who they use mostly, like, as a dime, so kind of in the slot, and he looks more like he fits there than on the outside. So it makes sense from that perspective. But also, like I said, like, he's big, he's strong, like, he's physical, he's fast. Like, I'm curious to see what the testing is, because Wiggins is probably going to be, like, in the 4.3s, I'd imagine, which is insane. And I maybe that doesn't even matter so much anymore, because, like, Tyreek Hill's out of the division. You're not so worried about getting burned. Like, when you're playing Devontae Adams, you don't necessarily need just, like, pure speed. You need, like, a big guy who can fight. And Terrion Arnold, he breaks things up. Like, he's taught those Bama cornerbacks. They just play so well. It's like that big cover 3, the way they funnel guys to the sideline or, like, push him into the safety downfield. Like, the technique is there. He's not quite as big as Pat. Like, he's not as long as Pat. But there's just a lot to like.
Yeah, and it's not a surprise that Alabama cornerbacks are good, not only because Alabama gets the best talent, but you have the greatest college coach of all time who really focuses on defensive backs coaching you for 4 years. And in Alabama, you also do really develop there. It's different than some other programs, at least when Saban was there before he retired. So, Todd, I'm curious if you think this is a position of need worth using a first-round pick on.
You know, as I watch all the games, you know, throughout the year, I think that the number one need was offense, period. And if there are 9 offensive players taken, there's still somebody there that we could use. You know, Damari Mathis, he didn't have a phenomenal year, but I think he played pretty solid for most of it when he became the starter and was really, you know, able to earn his spot. He had 1 or 2 bad games, but for the most part, I think he played pretty well and well enough for the team to be successful. Like, I think you got to decide whether you want something like that's so locked down that you're willing to spend a first-round pick on, or do you have something that's pretty good right now and you can go get something to help you in another area? Like, yeah, we could always use another lockdown corner, but is that going to be the difference to take us from 8 and 9 to 12 and 5? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to do it. I think it's a quarterback. I think it's a tight end. I think it's more offensive production, because if you're on the field longer and your team is producing, you're actually going to play less defense. There's less of an opportunity for guys to get picked on in coverage. I think we need offense.
I think I have a lot of thoughts about Jaquan McMillan. Obviously, like, played really great and forced a lot of turnovers, but he wouldn't be the first player to kind of have, like, a bit of a sophomore slump. You know, when he was in coverage, he wasn't perfect. You know, like, he gave up the touchdown to Devontae Adams in the last game and was, like, inches away. And there were some plays like that where you're just like, the Chris Harris comparisons are a lot of fun and be great if that was the case. But when you just look at, like, down to down, like, are you forcing incompletions? Jaquan is not at that level yet. And so if he keeps, like, getting the interceptions and forcing the fumbles and all that, then obviously, like, the Broncos might just have a Pro Bowler right there. And you go into the season absolutely saying, like, Jaquan's the starter. But
Outside?
No.
Yeah.
No. Just in the slot. But then you also could run into a situation where you say, like, okay, we've got Damari and Riley Moss competing for the outside job. We've got Jaquan in the slot. What if Jaquan does have a bit of a step back? Because while he did look good, like, it is a smaller sample size. You can trust Pat. I'm not sure. There's like that 10 to 15% chance that Jaquan just has a bit of a down year. And if you have that and you have trouble on the outside, then all of a sudden you're just reeling on defense.
Yeah, you don't need another starting cornerback on the outside, because the combination of re-signing Fabian, going and getting a veteran that can fill that spot good enough to be your second cornerback across from Pat, and then Riley Moss, Damari. So you don't need one. So I think this is a luxury pick. But if I'm picking a player or a spot on defense in the first round, I am picking cornerback, because that luxury to have Pat and specifically a Terrion Arnold, who I think complements Pat perfectly, I think is so juicy. But Todd, I ultimately agree with you. It's a luxury because you need offense. Yeah. So maybe this is honestly worst case scenario, if the Broncos don't like Michael Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy, or Bo Nix, not even close to enough to use a first-round pick on him. then I would like this pick with the way the board fell. But man, I do agree with you. It's got to be offense, unless honestly the board falls like this. But with Terrion Arnold, he's the perfect complement to Pat, because Kool-Aid McKinstry is pretty much a not as talented Pat Surtain. Now, still a really good player. I would still feel comfortable if a team used a first-round pick on that. And what I mean is, like, great technique, fundamentals coming out. He is going to be able to be a lockdown cornerback. But that's what you have in Pat Surtain. What Terrion Arnold brings is he brings all the physical tools that you want, just like Pat Surtain does as well. He has more physical tools than Kool-Aid McKinstry, but then he's also a guy that makes plays on the ball. And isn't that exactly who you want opposite Pat Surtain? Is a guy that isn't just going to be shut down, but maybe gives some things up, but also capitalizes when the ball's around. He also, I believe, had 5 interceptions last year at Alabama. That's exactly what we talk about. A quarterback's going to have to throw opposite of Pat Surtain a lot. And if you have a playmaker out there, that changes the defense.
I agree. But if I'm making a luxury pick on defense, I'm going outside linebacker.
Okay.
I think outside linebackers affect the game more than corners. If you look at most teams' makeups, not only is the outside linebacker more in the game in the run game, but also when it is passed, I can affect the quarterback. If you are beat, if you are running behind him, he may never even get the ball out. If you look at our team, every team, championship or not, I think Von did more than Aqib and Chris. I think D. Ware did more than Chris. I think that outside linebackers affect the game more positively. So if we're going to go somebody that's not offense, then we have to go Dallas Turner or another outside linebacker that's going to affect the game, run game and pass game, and really make a difference.
And I love hearing that perspective from you, because you know it better than anyone, being in the middle and knowing how all those guys affect it. And I totally understand what you're saying. For me, just why I go the extra luxury, and because maybe it is more of a luxury than that outside linebacker, is then you would have your corners for the next 10 years. And you don't have that Pat Surtain at outside linebacker, which maybe shows that you need to go get your Pat Surtain at outside linebacker and use that pick at outside linebacker for that.
Well, and then the other weird thing about outside linebacker is that you don't have any free agents. Like, there's only like a couple positions on the team where you just have everybody back.
Frank Clark?
And yeah, he's not on the team.
Oh, you mean free agents on this team right now? Okay.
But like, you look through, like, Nick Benito's 24, Baron Browning 24, Jonathan Cooper 26, Perkins is 24, Incoop 24, the Drew Sanders, if you want to throw him in there, 23. Like, they're so young there, and they weren't great, obviously. I think so. Jonathan Cooper had the most sacks on the team. He had 8.5, tied for 33rd in the league. You want more out of your top guy. The Broncos were also one of 12 teams that had 2 players with 8 or more sacks. So you could kind of look at that and be like, well, they did kind of like piecemeal. They finished 21st in sacks overall. Like, it's not an ideal setup, but just given that they don't have a lot of assets, if they decide, like, we're just running it back with Benito, Browning, and Cooper, hoping for some growth, it's not ideal, but it could work out.
Yeah, and your plan there is hope.
Your plan there's hope.
Might not be the best thing. It's just relying on hope there. And so, Todd, I totally see what you're saying about going to get that guy. And you look at the 4 remaining playoff teams that are left. Nick Bosa. How is he?
Phenomenal.
Chris Jones, not a true edge guy, but still a pass rusher. How is he?
Phenomenal.
Aiden Hutchinson.
He's pretty good.
And then what team am I leaving off?
Jadeveon Clowney.
Oh, yeah, Jadeveon Clowney. And, oh, man, he's about to be a free agent defensive tackle for the Ravens. He actually leads their team in sacks. Why can't I think of his name?
Oh,
he's got 13 sacks this
Madubuike.
year. Yep. He's
Madubuike?
pretty damn good,
I'm not
too.
sure. I haven't said it since the draft,
Do you know who had the most sacks in the NFL this year as a team?
The Ravens.
Number 1. You know who number 2 was?
49ers.
The 49ers. Now, I don't know where the Chiefs and Lions stack up, but 1 and 2 right there. So, yeah, pass rush, pretty important. And I guess that's why Mel has Latu going to the Broncos there. And his production, massive asterisk next to his neck injury.
Who are the corners for the 49ers? I know one is a Pro Bowler.
Charvarius Ward,
Charvarius Ward. Who's the other one?
Who is the other one?
That's my point.
Wow.
You can name Armstead. You can name Bosa. You can name Chase Young. You can name Randy Gregory. You can name their whole front 4 because they affect the game.
True.
Tre'Davious Ward, Pro Bowler. Pat Surtain, that's equivalent. other guy on the other side just has to be decent.
I
He
can't
doesn't
remember
have
who
to
that
be
is.
nice.
But Todd,
Yeah, you're right.
Akeem Talib and Chris Harris, man.
But that was-
it's just
Of course you
emotional. It's just
have
emotional.
like Cinderella moments where you
Right,
get the
right,
best of the
right.
best. Like
Yeah.
you get times where you have Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and your quarterback is phenomenal. You got 3 Pro Bowlers, first team All Pros on offense. Sometimes you get those.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I can't say that you're gonna always get that. But the formula is you got a pretty good quarterback, you got a pretty good tight end. We
Yep.
know those wide receivers on the Chiefs hasn't played well at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we got our quarterback, we got
Yeah.
our tight end.
It's true.
Yeah.
You
But
know?
I want the luxury of
Yeah.
purely on the field of not just Chris Harris
Just
and Akeem
talking
Talib,
mess.
but I want Rob Gronkowski and
Yep.
only on the field Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah.
I want that. I want that. I want that combination
That's
where
a
it's
hot
like
take. We
the
gotta clip that for
ultimate-
sure.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate luxury, but it is a luxury, and so I totally see what you're saying.
Killers on the field, huh?
And off.
Yeah, that's the thing though. Is like they're not like you make a good point. Like you're not going to add a corner and go from 8 wins to 12 wins. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think an edge rusher gets you 12 wins either, though. Is
Yeah.
the thing. Like you're kind of
So then we circle back. Offense.
Yeah.
You know what's sad is I think we have a lot of holes to fill.
that is the problem.
I think that's the issue.
That's what
really true.
sucks.
It's really
and,
true.
And honestly, the reason I go Arnold over, first of all, in this scenario where like Dallas Turner is off the edge, I guess you have like Jared Verse is still out there. I just think Arnold has a better chance of being a Pro Bowler. Like I just think that he's probably the better player than those guys. If they do decide to go edge rusher, like I totally understand why they would go that route.
And come on, also 2 Alabama cornerbacks.
That would be cool.
That'd be fun.
They'd
would be
yeah.
dope.
Well, I also wonder how helpful that could be for like a second Alabama cornerback coming in and working with Pat, who made that same transition from that same system, and might be able to like translate just a little bit and teach a little bit. Maybe
Potentially,
nothing,
yeah.
but like you never know.
And maybe Nick Saban comes out of retirement to be the Broncos defensive backs coach if Christian Parker gets
That would be
hired
crazy.
as
Yeah,
the
maybe.
defensive coordinator.
That would be
I mean,
crazy.
if you also get Nick Saban, if you draft Terrion Arnold, trade up for Terrion Arnold.
I agree, man. And Terrion Arnold, the opposite personality of Pat Surtain. We talk about how Pat's personality is fantastic. It's everything you want as a teammate, but as a shutdown corner, it might not help him with the national perception of people talking about him. Terrion Arnold will draw some attention to that
Yes.
room. So
That-
maybe that would help.
He's a dog, too. Like in the running game, like even when he's going up against like offensive linemen, like Jaquan does this stuff too. So it's not like he'd be the only one. Like obviously Terrion's like a bigger guy, so it kind of looks nicer, and he's like tossing receivers out of the way. But the tackles he makes are pretty crazy.
Yeah, and he's big.
He
and,
is big.
and willing to get in there.
Like that's part of the reason I'm so confident. Is you just look at him and you're like, well, you're definitely an NFL player. Like look at you. You know, like there's no way you can't play in the NFL.
Right.
But my
100%.
question is, would that discredit Pat a little bit because then you have another all-pro style player on the other side?
Or as Daniel Jeremiah said, the Broncos could pretty easily just have the best cornerback duo in the NFL. Daniel Jeremiah also like mocked Terrion Arnold
For
there.
the next 10 years, potentially.
In theory, if you want to pay him
Man.
that long.
And I
Yeah.
just think they complement each other so well. I'm
Maybe.
so sold on this, even though
But
I
if
know
we-
it's a luxury.
If we make that pick, do we have to keep Russ? Is that the caveat?
God.
Like if we go defense, then that means we.
So it's such a good question.
Well-
and Todd, it's something I wanted to bring up after I tell you about our
Okay.
friends over at Illegal Pete's, where whoever comes to town, we got to show them Illegal Pete's. Whoever the Broncos' first pick is, got to take them to Illegal Pete's because they've got the best queso in town. It's probably the best queso in the country. Also, the best margs. They're strong, they're delicious, and they don't taste like tequila, yet they pack a big-time punch. So you want to check them out. You can get the prickly pear marg. They have a great house marg, but then you can add like so many different flavors in too. So check them out. And check out their newest location in Wheat Ridge. It's off of 26th and Kipling, overlooking Crown Hill Park. They're all over the state, Fort Collins, Boulder, all around Denver as well. We love them. They've got a fantastic happy hour. So check out our friends over at Illegal Pete's.
Go check out Red Hawk Roofing too. For those of you who are lucky enough to own a home, make sure you put a roof on it. Because as somebody who rents an apartment, I'm no expert, but roofs seem pretty important.
Yeah, even in an apartment, they're important.
Well, I have like I have a ceiling, and then I have like the people above me's floor.
Yeah, but
So-
imagine if they didn't have a roof.
Eventually,
It
I
would
guess that would
eventually
leak.
get to you.
You
Yeah,
would think.
yeah.
You would think. So Red Hawk Roofing, for any of you who haven't been paying attention, get those guys out there because they're Denver's best roofers. They're part of the DNVR team. They've got quality materials, decades of experience, quick response time. They're Colorado's best estimators and contractors. They love us, which we love. And there's no obligation if you have one of their free roof and property inspections. They'll have free in-depth photo reports for all their inspections. Winter is already here, so definitely get this figured out so that they can get to work. Red Hawk Roofing is also giving away their company's 2 tickets to the Nuggets-Sixers game in 3 days, and they're going to be doing it at our watch party tomorrow night. So they're raising money to match support for the Volo Kids Foundation, which we also love. It's a good cause, they're good people, so make sure you're at the DNVR bar tomorrow night so that you can get in on that drawing for the 2 tickets for the Sixers game. What are the odds Embiid's actually going to play? Because he hasn't played in Denver since 2019, 2018?
Is it
2019?
always based on a slight injury, or is it...
He'll play the next game.
Yeah.
Is the altitude, you think?
It's a little Serbian flu.
He's afraid of playing in Denver.
I mean, he just...
Serbian
so?
flu.
Yeah, it's soft. It's soft.
Damn, he just put up 70. You gotta come.
You got to.
You gotta
Yeah, put
come
up
play.
70 on
And-
nobody's.
And you
It
just
was
beat
not-
the Nuggets in your home state. So, I mean, if he's ever going to feel confident enough to play the Nuggets in Denver, it's got to be now, right?
Yeah. I hate it. They were playing that game, and like the broadcasters were saying, like, well, you've got to give him credit for playing in this game. You're like, what? We got to give him credit for showing up and playing in the like that's his job is playing a game. Like, oh yeah, we give him credit for showing up when Jokic is there. Like, congrats. Like, oh, what a great guy playing in this basketball game,
Yeah,
which is his job.
Pretty damn soft. But Todd, you brought up the question that I had when looking at all these mock drafts. So, of these 7 mock drafts that we're looking at, only one of them had the Broncos taking a quarterback. Maybe even something more egregious in your eyes, Todd. 6 of the 7 mock drafts had the Broncos taking a defensive player. And I so wish that with every single mock draft that didn't have the Broncos taking a quarterback, they had a little asterisk of what the Broncos' plan was at quarterback.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
It's up in the air, and I feel like we can't go get a corner and then not put together any offense. I mean, corners are great, but nobody can cover all day long. Like
Yep.
people are going to get beat. It happens even to the best of them. So we got to have some way for these guys to stay off the field. And if we do go defense, I think we have to keep Russell Wilson. Him and Sean got to figure it out. Jared Stidham can be his backup, but we got to bring Russ back if we're not going to go get a quarterback.
One of the interesting things, so like I've said, they've had all 3 of the big ones had 4 quarterbacks in the first round. 2 of them had McCarthy in like the middle of the first round saying like he should probably be a 2nd round pick. One of them had Bo Nix right there and said basically the same thing. The only mock draft that had 2 rounds in it was Dane Brugler's from The Athletic. He had Bo Nix going at 34. He also had Michael Penix at 44. So there could be a world in which the Broncos trade up and say like, this guy sitting right here, now we can go get him.
No. I hate it because in
Why?
this scenario right here, where the Broncos don't take a quarterback at 12, they have to have either brought Russ back or they have to have signed a Jameis Winston or
Somebody
Ryan
said you were going to say Jameis Winston. They were
Tannehill.
like, please don't say Jameis Winston.
So Jameis Winston or Ryan Tannehill. Maybe Jameis would get some people excited. Maybe he wouldn't. Outside of Jameis, like they're not getting Baker Mayfield. They're
Yeah.
not getting Kirk Cousins. No other quarterback in free agency is going to be exciting at all. But they have to have one of those guys.
But if you
Yeah.
have Jameis, you wouldn't be interested in having Penix?
No, potentially.
Okay.
But so that changed because in this scenario, you have to have one of those guys.
Yep.
Because what you can't do is be relying on the draft after pick 12
Yeah.
to go get your quarterback. Your starting quarterback. Like what I'm saying is in these scenarios, you can't just have Jared Stidham on the roster. It can't be Jared Stidham. And it can't be Jared Stidham and even like Marcus Mariota. Like it can't be because there's a chance that if you're waiting for Michael Penix to fall and a team drafts him at 31 when you were going to trade up to 32 or he's there at 40 and you're going to trade up to 40 and get him and a team drafts him at 38, Michael Penix cannot be your plan of like, we're just going to grab him in the second round. That can't be your plan. That's why you have to have something else here.
Well, I would say
if you're passing on
regardless,
a
even unless like in March they trade up and get like a top 3 pick, I would imagine they're going to get another quarterback. Like it's very rare that a team goes into the draft with holes on their roster, unless you're like the Panthers and you're just like, well, we're just gonna have holes everywhere anyway. Typically, you just plug all those up. So I would say even if they're taking a quarterback at 12, or even if they plan on trading up, like, you just can't be pigeonholing yourself into like, yeah, we sure hope that 4 of them aren't off the board before you get to pick 12, and we're just stuck with whoever number 5 is. So I would imagine that whether it's Russell Wilson or somebody else, it isn't just Stidham and DiNucci on the roster when you go into the draft.
It's funny because I feel like in these drafts where they call it quote unquote like a quarterback heavy draft or a wide receiver heavy draft, I think we get spoiled and then we start become ungrateful for the players that are in the draft. Like Bo Nix may not get picked till the second round. He still had 4,500 yards and was 77% completion. Like,
I know.
In any other draft, he's the top 1 or 2 guy coming out of the class.
Yeah.
Like, I think just because it's not, Caleb Williams and Drake Maye, it doesn't mean that these guys aren't going to be very good players. And if they were in any other draft, teams would be trading up to get these guys. And so I don't know. I just feel like I don't want us to get caught up in the hype of all the guys that are going first and not feel like we can get somebody good just because they're not top 3 or 4.
And also not being afraid to draft the 4th quarterback in the draft or the 5th quarterback in the draft. Now, you don't just want to take a quarterback to take a quarterback. If you have a 3rd round grade on the 4th quarterback and he's the top guy left at 12, maybe not worth it then.
Yeah.
But if you have a 1st round grade on Bo Nix and it turns out that he's the 5th there's 4 quarterbacks drafted in the first 11 picks, Todd, I'm right with you. You know who was a 5th quarterback taken in the draft? Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
How's he look right now?
Like
Looks
the
damn
best
good.
quarterback.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter as long as Sean identifies him as the guy. So I totally agree with you. And Bo Nix, man, the more that I watch him, the more research I do about him, the more I think he could be Sean Payton's guy.
I really feel like any of the 6 I would take at 12. If the rest of them are gone, if one of those 6 are on the board, I would take them at 12.
And if they're all gone, then you're okay.
Then we got to do something else.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy if they were all gone. But yeah, I went down like a Joe Milton rabbit hole last night. The Tennessee quarterback who's like 6'5", 245. Like, some people have said he might have like the biggest arm in the history of the draft, which is like, it's absurd and there's no way it's actually true. But then you watch him and you're just like, oh my God, like that's a 40-yard pass. And it was just like a laser just right there. The problem is he isn't like great at football. Like it's like a lot of like one read stuff and like the accuracy isn't always there. And I was like, well, he did still have like 2,800 yards. It's pretty good. And then I like go through the others and I was like, oh, turns out everybody's just throwing for like 3,500 yards now in college football, which is crazy.
He's trying to discredit Michael Penix going for over 4,500 yards
I'm not
back-to-back years.
discrediting Michael
Nobody's
Penix.
doing that.
I would never, anywhere else in the world, I'm super pro Michael Penix, but just comparatively, I guess I'm. No. Like when I talk to people outside of Todd, I'm like the Michael Penix guy. But when Todd's here, he just takes it to another level, and I'm anti-Michael Penix.
Then you got to knock him down.
I don't knock him down.
So how do you feel about this? Jordan Reed, let me just go through of these 7 who they have the Broncos taking. Dane Brugler has Terrion Arnold. So does Bucky Brooks. So does Daniel Jeremiah. And I misspoke earlier. There's actually one other cornerback that's not Terrion Arnold that ESPN's Matt Miller has. It's Missouri cornerback. How do you say his name?
Ennis Rakestraw?
Ennis Rakestraw.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. So 4 cornerbacks. Then we mentioned Mel Kiper has Latu going to the Broncos. And then Trevor from PFF, Trevor Sikma, has Dallas Turner going to the Broncos. And the one non-defensive player is ESPN's Jordan Reed, has Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy. McCarthy probably over Bo Nix and Michael Penix.
Those guys were both second rounders.
I'd probably put him 3rd on my
later.
list of those 3 in terms of how the Broncos would be on.
Yeah, I still haven't done like the full deep dive. Dre talked me into him a little bit because it is true. Like, you watch like if you just turn on the highlights, for example, you turn on like the JJ McCarthy highlights and you watch him, you're like, oh yeah, he's out there, like he's playing football, like he's going through his progression. Then you turn on like the Jayden Daniels highlights, you're like, this is like
This is
spread offense.
Yeah.
They're just like running deep. They're like, it's more like one read
It's like
type
Matt
of
Leinart
stuff.
versus Vince Young, just totally different.
Exactly,
tape.
like it's not
Totally
even the same.
different
But then
tape.
you like look at it and you're like, well, if you're trying to run an NFL offense, like McCarthy is maybe the most experienced in this draft at running just an NFL offense.
Yeah.
And that does count for something. And it also, like, he has like the great offensive line and the running game and all that sort of stuff. But like third downs, he was really effective. You get like those rollouts, he's super effective. Like, you want him to go through his progressions. Like, he's done that. He isn't quite as experienced, obviously, as like Jayden Daniels, who was a starter in 2019, which is pretty crazy. But like, you see the appeal there. You're just projecting a lot and saying like, you have like a decent starting point, but like, he just hasn't played as much football as some of those other guys.
You know what? Maybe the ideal scenario
Still growing,
is
probably.
Still growing.
Like, he's probably
how
putting
old is
on
he?
another like 15 pounds. He's still 20. He'll be 21 by the draft, I think.
That's wild. You know what would
Yeah.
be the ideal scenario potentially for JJ McCarthy for the Broncos' perspective? Jim Harbaugh becomes the Chargers head coach with the number 5 overall pick.
Yeah.
They take JJ McCarthy and they trade Justin Herbert. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
Jim thinks JJ's the best quarterback in Michigan football history, if not all of college football history, but it doesn't really matter because Tom Brady was a Michigan quarterback too. So if he thinks he's that good, wouldn't you use a number 5 pick on him?
I mean, you could.
I don't think it'd be a bad idea. Like, it'd
No
be
way.
I mean,
was saying that
if
in
it
the
was Jim
trolling the
Harbaugh.
Chargers way.
Yeah, but I mean, like, if it was like the Falcons taking him there, I'd be like, what the hell are you doing? But if it's Jim Harbaugh taking him there, like, you know what he does well, you communicate from, like, you keep this offense very similar. Like, the transition, the odds of it working out for JJ McCarthy with Jim Harbaugh are twice as good as they are for JJ McCarthy with just about anybody else.
What if he took another quarterback?
Then I would
Like a totally different
I wouldn't
quarterback.
consider touching JJ McCarthy.
It's like when Pete Carroll was at the Seahawks and they needed a safety. I remember Taylor Mays in college.
Oh,
just
yeah.
breaking people's spines. It was like the year right before Pete Carroll came to the Seahawks, and he takes Earl Thomas in the first round. Like, that would be crazy. That would
That's
be
terrible.
crazy.
That's
Also-
really good. You stay so far away from JJ then.
I just pulled up the Terrion Arnold stats just because I was like, I remember watching him make like a bunch of tackles, and I was like, there's got to be some cool numbers. He had 6.5 tackles for loss last year as a cornerback.
Dang.
That's ridiculous. He also like forced a fumble, the 12 pass breakups, the 5 interceptions, the sack, 63 tackles. Like, that is a loaded stat sheet. And he also like played in the slot a bunch, which is nice, but he is the best cornerback in the draft. Like, I'm convinced.
Luxury.
I'm ready to lock it in, put it in ink.
So among these guys, let's wrap this conversation up. Among these guys that have been mocked to the Broncos, Terrion Arnold, Dallas Turner, Ennis Rakestraw, JJ McCarthy, and Latu. Who would you like?
Dang, that's tough. Let me go with. I think Dallas Turner's a great player. I don't know. I want you to be trending up as you exit college, and
Right.
not kind of like
Right.
teeter
That's
off.
fair.
It happens to the best of them, though. So I guess we'll take a corner.
Let's go.
We'll take a
Over
corner.
JJ
Let's
McCarthy.
Do it. Let's do it.
I love it. Yeah, I'm going Terrion Arnold too.
Yeah, I think I probably would. You know, I almost talked myself into JJ McCarthy there just for a
Yeah,
second,
you
but I'm not
almost did.
like tricking myself. Dallas Turner, if he's there, is tempting. He's a little skinny, but like that's still like a big dude on the edge and like a freaky talent. You might look back and say like he was a Hall of Fame type of player. But I also think like Terrion Arnold, he isn't going to be bad. Like, you at the very least have like a starting corner. You patch that up, and I think there's a real chance that he's just an incredible player also.
Boom. I love it. I love it. This is going to be fun. We're going to go back to mock drafts a lot
Yes,
this
sir.
offseason as things shake up. And let's get to the comment section. Let's hit a couple super chats. First one coming in from our friend Vincent, who says, like the idea of trading down. George Payton does well drafting later round guys, and the draft is deep. Might still get Penix, Nix, JJ, or draft Pratt in the 3rd round. So really quick, with trading down, the dynamic between the Paytons is so interesting. George Payton, during his time with the Vikings, love trading down. They trade down all the time from the first round to the second round later in the draft. They loved accumulating picks. George said it's like darts. You just want to have as many darts as you can to throw at a board when it comes to draft picks. So he always likes to have like 10 plus draft picks.
Yep.
Sean Payton, the complete opposite. During his 15 years with the Saints, they traded up in the first round more than any other team in the NFL. So you're right. George Payton does like trading down. Sean Payton, the one who I think is making the decisions, likes trading up.
Yeah.
So the Broncos have 6 picks in the draft this year. George Payton wishes it was 12.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they select 4 or 5 players because they trade up and use some of those picks.
I think that's smart. And then when you're always trading down, man, you got to be careful of who you're trading with and what implications that can have, because we've all seen the Bills.
Yeah.
And they traded down from 10. And, of course, the Chiefs went and got Patrick Mahomes. Bills ended up getting 3 Pro Bowl players, but Patrick Mahomes has ended your season multiple years in a row. I think you would definitely trade those away if you can go back in time. So, got to be careful.
In their tweet when they put it out, it said like the Bills tweeted it out when they made the trade before knowing who Patrick Mahomes was, and it said like, pleasure doing business with you, Chiefs.
They thought they won.
Yeah, not really a pleasure anymore.
Yeah. What would you guys think of taking a lineman? Because that's the other thing with Sean. Yeah. Sean, they take a lot of like tackles.
Yeah, I mean,
because there's some really good ones. Like you could just go get like a great tackle at number 12.
Yeah, it would be the ultimate kind of like we're rebuilding this year. And it's not a bad move. Like, you look at the Lions. They had, the number 2 overall pick when they drafted Penny Sewell? And that was like, well, that's not going to make us a much better team next year. But for the next 10 or 15 years, that could be the good move. And it certainly looks like it was the right move then. But it's just not, you're not taking a jump next year by doing that.
No, because you already have kind of like your lineman.
Right.
But then it would make it really easy to move off of McGlinchey after next year if things don't go well.
Or
like
Bowles this year.
Bowles, you could trade him that same day if you wanted to and add another pick. I don't know. I don't know what I think of drafting a tackle.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a big conversation. Next one from Nick says, what's a fake trade that would get the Broncos a top 5 pick? Okay. So what would the Broncos have to give up to get to number 5 with the Chargers? Let's say number 4.
4 is really expensive.
The Cardinals.
4, you're trading for Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
Or that's how the Cardinals see it, because that's who they would take.
That's the tough thing.
And so I don't even think 2
paying a
firsts probably
premium.
does it. But that's where if you're trading for the Chargers pick, first this year, first next year, you probably need to throw in something this year just so that they get like a little bump there. But
a 3rd?
I think the Chargers would definitely take that.
Man, so then you pick at number 5 if you're the Broncos, and you don't pick again until the 4th round.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
whoever
And
you're
there
getting
was,
there
like-
better be damn good.
Like the scenario there for me is like the Dane Brugler draft. He was the only one who didn't have quarterbacks top 3. He had Jayden Daniels going number 8.
Wow.
Like if you're sitting there and you can trade a couple first round picks for Jayden Daniels, go do it.
Yeah.
Like
totally agree.
That's an easy decision to make.
Totally agree. Next one coming in from Joe says, Todd, can you tell us if the NFL is not unequivocally unequivocally rigged, scripted, using numerology, or gematria? I've never heard that word before.
No, me neither.
I would say it isn't though. It isn't gematria.
It isn't gematria. That sounds like something you don't want.
I think if it is rigged, it's not rigged by the players. It's rigged by maybe
But you
officials.
think or you know that?
No, I'm not saying that it is. I don't think the NFL is rigged.
No.
But also you would understand seeing certain things happen, like having a Super Bowl winning team and trading away most of your pieces after you won the Super Bowl, not really trying to get back into the mix, not really trying to find a quarterback. Not saying that's what we did, but
That is true, isn't it?
it definitely, you can. The people that have the power to move the pieces are the ones that can rig it more so than guys, because guys are fighting for their life and they're trying to make more money.
Yeah.
I've never had anybody hand me a bag of money.
That'd be cool
So
though.
that might be cool.
How's
but
your
yeah.
when does your NDA expire?
NDA for what?
Or not being able to talk about the NFL being rigged?
I think I got 2 more years left.
I think
Tune back in 2 years.
Exactly.
what makes it so tough, it's definitely not rigged. The NFL isn't rigged, but the refs are so bad that it just opens the door for
They
people
are
to say that it's
so
rigged
bad.
because the refs screw things up constantly.
Let's hope it doesn't happen this Sunday.
Yeah, because all it takes is like, honestly, either way, like what most people expect, especially in Denver, is like, oh, they didn't call the pass interference and now the Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. Look, the NFL loves the Chiefs. But it could go the other way and all the Chiefs fans are saying like, the NFL isn't giving us a chance. They're sick of the Chiefs, like whatever. And it's just like, because of the bad reffing, it just opens that door. And that's the part of it is like they're teaching refs to ref badly now. It's like, yeah, you know, like if it's a turnover, like, or like it's a fumble and you're not sure if it's a fumble or not, don't blow the whistle. Like, let them run the ball because it'll be an automatic. Like, no, get the freaking call right. Like, as soon as you start saying like, don't just get the call right every single time, you're opening a can of worms right there. And I don't know. We can have a whole ref podcast at some point, but it's terrible.
And let's open a can of worms to end this by checking in with an OG over at DNVR.com. Nacho Brad says, OG checking in. It was so great to hear me called out. Although I'm officially now Nacho Brad. I've
That's
changed
true.
from Burrito Brad. Ever since Ryan mentioned every time he saw me, I was eating nachos, not burritos. Still true. For our newbies and Todd, it started out the off season during 7 or 8 years ago when someone mentioned a burrito shop located in Flagstaff, Arizona. I dragged my wife and daughter on a 3-hour road trip to try their breakfast burrito just because 2 random guys on the quote radio asked me to do it. The rest, as they say, is history. My daughter now has 2 daughters of her own. My goodness, how time flies. Greatest memories of DNVR: 1, Brandon Spano yelling at me for wearing a BSN shirt to the draft, which we were only on sale for about 5 minutes before the Broncos got them pulled off the shelf. That's right.
True. That is
Broncos
true.
BSN shirts. We had them,
Yeah.
and the Broncos said, nope, you can't sell those. So we pulled them off the shelf. 2, commissioning the worst league in the history of fantasy football, the first ever BSN International Fantasy League with 32 teams. I think my starting quarterback was actually a second stringer. 3, another OG, Ryan Clayman donated a lot of money toward a fantasy draft bar tab at the Blake Street Tavern because he couldn't be there in person. What a class move it was. And shout out to Ryan Clayman. 4, the meetup in Phoenix, meeting everyone, especially Andy and his wife from Europe. 5, my undying rivalry with Space Bar. Shout out to Space Bar as well. So many good memories. Still here, still listening, still dreaming about the glory days behind and better days ahead. Love you guys. Remembering the 2018 podcast hits like, why aren't people more excited about Jared Valdir and what Saquon Barkley could do for the Broncos? Nacho Brad. Love hearing from you, Nacho Brad. We need to hear from more OGs as well.
I remember hearing those podcasts, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I remember working and having those in the background while I was working.
I love it. I love it.
What a time.
Yeah,
Why aren't
what
people
a
more
time.
excited about Jared Valdir? What a podcast.
Or the 2-hour shows with 40 comments on them, and I was like,
Oh yeah, we get 40 comments, and we want more comments from the OGs and from everyone over at DNVR.com. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, 11 a.m.
We all silly like the mayor.